Okay, so, well, first off, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time for yourself just to be here for tonight. Like I said, we only have an hour, so we're going to get started as soon as possible because, well, we've got a lot to get through, and quite simply, I didn't check the timing with this. I didn't time test it, let's say that. I kind of just guessed how long each section would take me, which is probably not the best way to do a workshop, so don't ever model doing workshops from me. So to truly embrace your brilliance, that's kind of where the focus is tonight. It's all about tapping in to your confidence. And there's a few things that we need to get clear on as we move through. And one of them is imposter syndrome. It's that life-sucking force, that thing that brings you to your knees and creates a ton of self-doubt in your abilities. So the theme of tonight is around starting the process of overcoming that imposter syndrome. Now, you might be thinking, well, what is that? And for many of us, it's kind of comes in many different forms, but it's that critical voice, it's that dreaded feeling in your belly. However you represent it, it is right for you. We all have a different way of representing what we refer to collectively as imposter syndrome. But in terms of its definition, it's that idea that you're simply not good enough, or your work isn't good enough, or where you are in life isn't good enough. It's this kind of constant putting down that who am I type of thing. So I'm going to be sharing with you probably maybe 4 or 5 different techniques. Again, might be but push time wise, but each one in its own right is very powerful. However, when it's combined, you get that double whammy effect. And some of these things you're going to be easily able to do and apply on your own. Others are slightly more complicated, probably not the right word. I don't do complicated. My philosophy of life is typically simplicity. So we will be keeping it simple. If there's more than 2 or 3 steps or something, it's just got a bigger framework. So instead of complicated, it's just got a bigger framework. There's more steps to follow, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to be guiding you through it anyway. So you're going to do absolutely great. So any point you find yourself tonight kind of getting confused, then you're just overthinking the situation. So I'm going to explain to you what your part is, what you need to do as we move through this event. Sound good? Perfect. Okay. So I'm just going to see who, okay. Like somebody's come into the room and then dropped out. I'm wondering if they're having issues getting in. Never mind. All right, so I know that you guys kind of know me already, but there is people who will be accessing this recording who don't know me. And before we even get started, I just want to share a little bit about my own kind of take on imposter syndrome and my own kind of journey through that. And I always remember being in a meeting with my boss, and she said something that just sent me into sheer panic. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My heart started to pound away, started to race. I was all sweaty and just all over the place. And all she said to me was, Amy, you're going to have to start doing assemblies. If you know me, my background's in education. I was a head of year for 10 years in secondary schools. And when I first started that role, public speaking was not on my agenda in any way, shape, or form. And in that single moment, the self-doubt, the inadequacy of just being a human being just came to the forefront, just completely overwhelming me. And I resorted back to a 14-year-old girl. And here I was as an adult, as a grown up, still repeating that same story of, well, who am I? What have I got to say? I can't speak in front of people. What I've got to say isn't important enough. I'm not good enough. And I even started to think that it would just be easier for me to quit than it would to be have to speak in front of all of those people. And worse than that, I was actually annoyed at myself and so frustrated that I was trying to avoid something that I actually wanted to do. So, you know, that moment when you realize that you've gone as far as you can on your own and you're just going around in circles with your life, like you can see that your future's mapped out in front of you and it's just not a good thing. I'd always been that kind of person who would never ask for help as well. I just had this kind of dialogue of just keep going, you'll be fine. Just plow through it, you'll be okay. But in reality, I never was. And that's when I realized that it was time to get some new information, some professional help to get rid of those old ways of thinking, those limitations, if you like. So for the past 9 or 10 years now, I've been learning and discovering tools that have helped me to completely reshape my life in ways that I never imagined possible. And as I gain control of my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions, I'm able to speak confidently, publicly, online, in schools, wherever now. And not to boast or brag about that, but it was that's just a definition of actually being able to overcome something that I never thought possible at all for me. And it wasn't until later on that I actually found out that public speaking is actually one of the most prominent fears in humanity. I think it's above death. People fear public speaking more than dying. I mean, what is that about? So hey, if I can overcome that, then you guys can overcome anything. So my name is Amy Cinnamond. I'm a certified professional hypnotist. I'm a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, which is an absolute mouthful to say, so you'll often hear it as just NLP. I'm an advanced practitioner in integral eye movement therapy and a few other amazing modalities, cognitive behavioral therapies. And what I do is I help people to reduce stress and anxiety and increase their confidence so that they can move into the changes that they want for themselves in the most efficient and effective way for them. And I want to continue helping people to recognize their inner strengths and believe in their own abilities, which is exactly why I'm here tonight putting on this workshop for you guys, because I'm excited. And even before we get started with that, I want to kind of bring a question to you about what is it that you want to get out of this workshop tonight? What is it that you want to achieve from the work that we're going to be doing here tonight? And just even getting something in your mind, kind of a feeling that you want to improve on, a feeling that you want to have more of, and just beginning to kind of question that a little bit, because you might already have something in mind, or you might just be kind of curious about what this is about and kind of what I can offer you in terms of embracing your brilliance, in terms of increasing that confidence, in terms of overcoming imposter syndrome, if that's something that you recognize is an issue for you. However, I appreciate that not everybody is familiar with that term imposter syndrome. It just really kind of, it's a generalization of a shitty feeling. Let's just put it that way. It's a generalization of I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy enough. And sometimes we don't even realize that it's those kind of thoughts and beliefs that are going on for us. And tonight isn't really about exposing them in any way. So don't feel under any pressure, don't feel any threat from me. I'm not going to be pulling those out of you or ripping them out of you in any way, shape, or form. It's really just about allowing you some insight into what might be lurking underneath and providing you with some tools that can actually put you in a better state of mind, a more resourceful state of mind, in order to begin that journey to overcome such beliefs. Make sense? Yeah, perfect. Okay, now let me just share my screen. How do I do that again? Okay. Screen. Now, that. Now, how do I make this? There we go. There we go. So very quickly, I'm just going to show you this model of the mind. Now, Some of you will already be familiar with this. For some of you, it might be the first time looking at it. And it's really just to give you a little bit of clarity on the conscious and unconscious mind, which is what you'll often hear people in my field of work referring to. Or if you do any kind of work around psychology, any therapeutic interventions, you'll often hear these terms used. But it's also a good way to begin to understand how you operate as a human being yourself and what level of mind are you working from at any particular time. Now, however, I must stress that we are using all of our mind all of the time. We just kind of move in and out of different areas in particular times, places, and events. So the very tip of the iceberg, that is representational of what we refer to as the conscious mind. And it's where we can access our critical thinking, our willpower, our logical thinking, our short-term memory. And it's typically referred to as, naughty me, I didn't put my phone on Do Not Disturb. It's typically referred to as that 10% part of the brain. And it's typically, again, what we operate from on a day-to-day basis. We get up in the morning, we think, right, I need to go to work, I need to get dressed. It's this sort of very surface structure of ourselves. Underneath that, we have what is referred to as the unconscious mind. And the unconscious part of the mind is, again, that is like the rest of the mind. So this is where we're talking about that 90%. And this is underneath the surface. So we're not always aware when we're accessing this part of us. We're not always aware when we're operating from this part of us. So this part is representative of beliefs, emotions, habits, values. It's our protective reactions. It's our intuition. It's, those gut feelings. That's where they come from. And it's relevant because when we think about things like imposter syndrome, when we think about those critical voices, those critical thoughts, or even those detrimental habits and behaviors, even when we're aware of them and we decide that we're going to change them and we want to change them, we're like, right, this is it, I'm doing it today, I'm losing weight, I'm not going to eat chocolate cake anymore, I'm not going to eat crisps anymore, I'm not going to eat any shite, no wine on a Friday night anymore. And yet there we are, eating chocolate cake, stuffing our faces, having the wine still. And it's as if we're just oblivious to whatever the conscious mind wants. If it's not in cohesion, if it's not in cooperation with that 90% part of the unconscious mind, you're literally only using willpower when it comes to changing habits and behaviors. And because that willpower is in the tip of the iceberg, it's above the surface level, it's only 10% energy that you've got, which is why willpower is never usually enough on its own, because particular habits of behaviors that we've been doing for a long time, whether that's eating habits, whether it's negative thinking patterns, they're in that unconscious level, which is why hypnosis and this kind of coaching is a really good asset, because it works with that part of the mind, it works with that element where we need to make those changes. When we think in a certain way, those patterns can become entrenched into our brain. It's a little bit like walking down the same path day in, day out, day after day. And then all of a sudden you decide that you want to go a different path. It feels weird. It's like, oh, this doesn't feel right. I'm just going to keep walking down the same path I have done every day because that feels right to me. It's normal. It's what I've been doing. And we end up believing that that's the right way to go. And that's exactly how beliefs are created. It's a thought that we have, it's a behavior that we have, or a habit that we have, and we do it repeatedly over time. So it brings me back to the question of what is it that you would like to gain from this experience tonight. So if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine, or you can just unmute and just share with me, if you would like, about what is it that you want to get from tonight. How would you like to be feeling at the end of this workshop? Any takers? Rebecca?
Um, I'd, I'd like to feel more like me again. You said about assemblies. I used to walk into assembly halls and I'd be saying, "Who's doing the assembly today? Oh, I've not turned up. Will you do it? Well, anything you want." And it didn't bother me. I could
Mhm.
just, yeah, I can talk for 20 minutes about nothing, and it didn't bother me. Put me in that situation right now, and I'd be like a gibbering wreck. Job, I knew I was a good mom. I knew I was a good gran. I knew I was a good partner. And right now, everything I just doubt that I'm very good at.
What we're going to do here tonight is actually going to be able to give you that reminder of, yeah, you are good and that you are only human as well. And it's again recognizing what qualities you have for yourself, isn't it? Because when our attention is so focused on everything that's going on around us, on the outside of us, that's where our focus is. And it's so easy to get caught up in all of the negative stuff that's going on. And sometimes thinking about ourselves is just out of the question, right? Thinking about what we want is out of the question. Guilt, all of that kind of comes into play as well with it. And, without kind of going into the details of the situation, listening to what you've just said there is about giving yourself the freedom to just say how it is you want to feel because you deserve to. And that's why I love putting on these workshops like this, because it gives you that opportunity to take time for yourself. But then also, we're going to go a little bit deeper than that because we take time for ourselves, don't we? We have a nice bath, we might chill out for an hour, we might give ourselves that little moment of downtime, but it's not really, is it? It's You're not really having that deeper connection with yourself. So I'm hoping tonight's going to give you that opportunity just to reconnect. Sound good? And Laura, do you want to share?
I'm always looking for knowledge and information and helpful hints on continuing to move forward, in the best place I can be because it does. Life is always coming, life is always moving and changing, and we're always in the mix. And the more I can find to support myself and to be in a good place for myself, I think the better off I am. So, that I know some of the things
Mm-hmm.
that you do, but I always know that when I come on, you might say exactly the right thing that it's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that one in a while. I need to use that. I need to do that. And sometimes it's just refreshing my own self and doing the things I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that because it's a reminder that we're always on a journey, just continuous learning, a continuous journey, which is one of the reasons why I do self mastery with my clients as well. So once somebody's been through one of my programs and they're finished, they then move into a self mastery where it's typical meet up twice a month on a continuous basis. And it's for exactly that, what you've just described. It's kind of keep and check in with where you're at, where you can improve, what else do I need? And you're right, sometimes it's just those little nuggets that kind of pop up out of nowhere, and you think, oh, yes, that's going to be helpful. That's going to give me some fuel for my engine to keep me going for a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I find too that, like you said in your journey, where you move through something and then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, something else comes up. There's the time period where you have moved past that thing and you almost forget that you just kind of go on your way, and sometimes you forget the helpful practices and the helpful things that got you there, and then you need that little reminder, which is why I'm here too, to go, oh, you need to do those again, or you need to put that into play.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. The premise is that they're kind of just so simple and subtle changes that we can create for ourselves to, really just get the ball rolling, especially when you're in that really, let's face it, real shit situation. You can't see beyond it sometimes. You just think, this situation is just so terrible right now. There can't be anything better on the other side of this. And it's too far of a jump sometimes right across the other side to think, well, I kind of know how I want to be, but getting there just seems impossible. Where I kind of feel like what we're doing tonight is just going to create a couple of steps on that ladder, or a couple of stepping stones across towards where you want to be. And again, they're simple, they're effective, they're easy to apply, because to kind of get over any idea of imposter syndrome, to kind of embrace the, I keep calling it that, embrace your brilliance, because when I was thinking about the title for the workshop, it was like, well, it is about tapping into your brilliance. And even my husband was like, do you not think that's a bit egotistical? And I was like, no. Why shouldn't we be celebrating our brilliance? Why shouldn't we be using that element of us to motivate us, to remind ourselves that actually, yes, I am where I'm meant to be. Yes, I am on a journey. Yes, I am able. Yes, I can do these things. And what happens is, when we're in a position where we can celebrate ourselves, which I know sounds like a little bit of a cliche, but I'm referring to how we celebrate ourselves because of our own psychology, because of how we, as it has you as an individual, process and perceive and represent the world around you. We often get into a battle with ourselves when we're kind of doing a lot of over comparison. It's this old malarkey again of who am I, bringing us back to that imposter syndrome when we compare ourselves to others. When we look at our lives and think, my life is shit, look at their life, which the majority of people do as soon as they go into social media. Constant focus on what other people are doing and saying, how are they doing it? How are they responding to me? Rather than what am I doing and saying that's reflective within me? And that's what I kind of want to bring out of what we're doing here tonight. So I want to do a little brief exercise to kind of bring us to this truth that we are all unique, that we are all very different, that we all represent the world in very different ways, even if we have the same beliefs, even if we have the same interests. They'll all have similar ingredients, if you like. However, they'll have a different representation. So, very quick exercise. Okay. So, I just want you to take a nice deep breath. And as you breathe out, just close your eyes on down. And this might sound really silly when I ask you, and it's okay if you're going to laugh about it. But all I want you to do is just think of an elephant. And as you think of your elephant, just begin to notice what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it smells like, perhaps, what it feels like, what it tastes like. And just begin to notice what that's like for you. And as you've got that, just open your eyes. Okay, and Laura, I'm going to pick on you first, just to share, what was your representation of an elephant? What was it like?
It was big and gray, and it had fairly big ears and tusks and very nice eyes, and it was probably a little darker gray. Um, I didn't taste the elephant, but it smelled, like earth, kind of earthy. So, yeah, that was my
Brilliant. Excellent. Okay, Rebecca, do you want to share, what was your elephant like? Oh, you'll have to unmute. There you go.
It was actually more a cartoon type elephant.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a real elephant, it was cartoon type, and it had like a smiley face, and was like a brown and beige colour. And I think it's an elephant that has come from my memory somewhere from when I was a child.
Yeah, nice. And my elephant was a pink one, and it was balancing like on a circus ball, and it had like what are they called? I don't know. Because I don't know, one of them poking out its mouth and a little hat on, like what that comedian used to wear. Anyway, Point being, all I
A
ask you to
kazoo?
do. Yeah, that's it. Thanks. The point being is that we all have a very unique representation of how we apply meaning to things. And all I asked you guys to do was to think of an elephant, right? However, you each came up with your own representations. Now, if this room was filled with 100 people, we'd have 100 very different answers. And it's important to remember because it brings us back to the idea that no two people are the same. So you can only ever compare yourself to you. Make sense? Right. It's a well-known fact that all our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are interlinked and that each one affects the other. Now, with that in mind, it's important to recognize that if we change a thought, we can change a feeling, we can change a behavior. However, if we change a behavior, we can also change a thought, we can change a feeling, and vice versa. Now, typically in the therapeutic models, it's a top-down approach, change your thoughts, change your feelings and behavior. But there is an easier way, a much faster way, which is to change your behavior. Now, when I talk about behavior, I'm referring to our physiology. Maybe having a malfunction. There we go. Can you guys still see me? Because I may have lost you. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I got you back. I don't know what happened there. Okay, I got you back. I lost my train of thought now. Okay, yeah. So our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interlinked. Now, so when I'm talking about behavior, I'm talking about our physiology, like what's going on at a biochemical level. And because typically our behavior when we are not in a good place with ourselves, when we are not feeling great within ourselves, often becomes that kind of depressive stance that we all are aware of. We can all look at somebody and be judgmental and be like, oh, they're in a bad mood, or they don't look too good, or they look pretty sad, right? We're judgmental about their behavior, but often what we're not doing is taking check of our own behavior. Where are we within our own behavior? What's our posture like? What are we doing? And again, it brings us back to that too much focus goes on the outside world rather than back on ourselves. And it's not selfish to focus on yourself. You're actually in a position where you're enabling yourself to put on your own oxygen mask before helping somebody else, right? The more aware you are of how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're behaving, actually allows you to serve the people around you in a much better way. So when it comes to our behavior, we can typically find ourselves in a depressive stance quite easily. So rather than talk anymore about this exercise, I just want to show you rather than tell. So just where you are right now, just get yourself into a position with your head down, with your shoulders down, slumped forward, and have your eyes looking down. And just keeping in that position with that head down, eyes down, shoulders slumped forward. Very briefly, I just want you to try and think of something really sad. Just for a moment, very briefly, just try and think of something really sad and just notice what it's like. Head down, eyes down. Now stay in that same position. And this time I want you to try and think of something really positive. Keeping head down, eyes down. Try and think of something with those eyes down, head down, shoulders slumped forward. Try and think of something really positive that would have you absolutely buzzing, jumping for joy, whatever that is for you. Just try and think of it now. Notice what it's like. Good. Now have your position changed. So this time I want your head up, I want your shoulders back, and I want your eyes looking up as high as possible. Now in this position, keep in that position, eyes up, chin up, chest up, shoulders back. I want you to try and think of that same sad thing and just notice what it's like in this position now. Good. Now stay in that position again. And this time I want you to think of that really positive thing, that thing that has you absolutely buzzing, jumping for joy. Think about that now and notice what that's like for you. Good. And as you've got that, just come back to your normal stance and feel free to unmute just to share. What did you notice about that? What was that like for you? Did anybody notice a difference in those different positions?
Yeah, I can share. In the downward position, it was both emotions were different. The sadness, was kind of dragged me down, and it was like, oh my goodness, that's just and the happiness was there, but it was like I was reaching for it, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And in the other position, it was the sadness was still there, but there was hope within it.
Yeah.
And the other just came like whoosh, it came in super easy and was right there. So that was the difference for me.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. The intensity of the sadness was much less as you were looking up, right? It's kind of like, oh, I still think of it. It's still sad. However, not as bad. Similar kind of thing for you, Rebecca? What was your experience like?
I think the thing that I really noticed is when I had my head down, I was thinking of the happy thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was then also thinking, I know, but what about this with it? You know, I was
Yeah.
looking for negatives in the happy thing as well. Whereas when I looked up, I just focused on the happy thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that because that's exactly the point that I always want to make in this exercise. And it comes up now and again, but it's this hijacking of these negative thoughts, hijacking what we, see as our positive thing. So when you were upright and you thought of that positive thing, what happened there?
I just thought that positive thing and felt good about that positive thing. Whereas
Yeah.
head was down, it was like, yeah, but then she also does this as well.
Yeah, yeah. And how often do we find ourselves just sitting in this position? And you can be sat here in this position, not particularly thinking of anything at all. And yet you'll find yourself turning towards the negative more often. If the body language is more often head down or stump forward, I mean, what do the majority of people do as soon as they get up in the morning? They have their head down, they're looking at a phone, they're reading their emails. Young people do it all day, every day. And we can't blame the kids anymore because all the grown-ups do it as well. So we're always slumped forward. So we have to be mindful about what is going on with our body language, because the position of your body is communicating to your brain about what chemicals it needs to release. And if we're slumped forward, the message is we're a victim, we need to hide, we need to be invisible, and you'll be filled with stress and anxiety so that you do those behaviors. When we're upright, we have head up, shoulders back. Again, we don't have to change our thoughts in this position. As you guys were aware then, it was the same thoughts. All we did was change the position, and it changed what happened on a biochemical level in your body. So this is where you can really start to use your physiology, your body, your behavior, your posture for you rather than against you. So the more times that you can check in with yourself during the day, especially when you find yourself in that dialogue, either with somebody else or yourself, of I'm shit, this is no good, my life's shit, and all the rest of it. How are you sat? Where are you sat? What position are you kind of looking in? Where's your head? Where's your shoulders? And just begin to notice predominantly what behaviors are you doing on a daily basis. So head up, shoulders back is vital. Now I'm just looking at the time, and yes, I have overachieved on this one by putting in more than what I can actually do. So I'm kind of just going to skip forward a little bit because I feel like this will be more beneficial of me guiding you guys through the next part of the process, because it's where we can kind of look at some individual aspects and really begin to break it down so that you can take it away and repeat it for yourselves. However, you're going to get the recording of this anyway, so you can always come back to these techniques to kind of go over them again, or you can just always kind of ask, what did we do there? How can I kind of do that for myself? But one of the things that I will reiterate before we kind of move on to this next bit is that the more times we access a state that we want to be in, a state of mind that we want to be in, so that posture change allowed you to be in a different state of mind, right? It allowed you to access those positive things. Now I'm going to ask you to kind of hone in on a particular resourceful state for you, a particular state that is going to be beneficial for you. When it comes to things like imposter syndrome, when it comes to things like not feeling worthy enough, not feeling good enough, often, now it's different for everybody, often something that can begin to resolve that, something that can allow us to shift into a different perspective with that, is this idea of being more confident to be in a different position, to be more confident to enable a different thought process to happen, to be more confident to actually think differently for ourselves, or even just to feel confident to change our posture. It gives us that foundation from which to build from. Now, again, that might not be what you feel that you need right now. So that's just an example of how I want you to bring yourself to a place of what's going to be right for you. And again, I'll guide you through this process anyway, because all we're going to do at the moment is get into a nice relaxed state, because hey, I'm a hypnotist, so let's do some hypnosis. So we'll get into a nice relaxed state. We're going to kind of go into a little bit of that negative feeling, a little bit of that negative feeling that you just want to have less of. So much so that we can begin just to play around with it. Now, I've got to say that this is not about kind of getting rid of anything, deleting anything, or anything like that. It's really just about giving you that opportunity to explore, because we often hold on to negative ideas, negative beliefs about ourselves, because our unconscious wants us to learn something from it. We often hold on to negative experiences because we don't want to let go of it in case that same bad thing happens again. So we have to always remember it. We have to always think about it in order for it not to happen again, which doesn't make any sense, right? But that's how we behave. So by exploring where these things are, exploring how we're representing these things, allows us just to play around a little bit. And what it enables us to do is to actually get into a different frame of mind altogether, where we're turning that attention inwards instead of out of ourselves. So bringing your attention inwards on yourself, allowing yourself to explore where is that resourceful feeling for you, whatever that is for you, confidence, calmness, relaxation, focus. It doesn't matter. When I refer to your resourceful state, I want you to decide what that is for you, okay? Now, we've only got like a few minutes, okay? So next time, I think this needs to be like a 2-hour workshop. I think I've just planned way too much. So all I want you to do is sit back, be in a relaxed position. We don't have to go into a deep hypnotic state for this. Like I said at the beginning, we're always moving in and out of trance. We're always moving through these states of consciousness throughout the day. So this is a very natural state to be in, but we do often give too much attention to that outside world. So all I want you to do now is just have yourself sat back, have your head relaxed, have your body relaxed, and just pick a spot up high up on the wall, not too high that it's uncomfortable for your eyelids, but just high enough so that you can begin to focus your eyes on one particular spot. Good. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to take 3 deep breaths in. And on each breath, You might notice that those eyes want to close, but for now, I just want you to do your best just to keep them open, because I want you to begin to practice keeping your focus. Keeping your focus on that spot allows you to begin the process of improving focus. So that's all you're doing. So take a nice deep breath in now. And as you breathe out, you might notice those eyes perhaps wanting to close, but for now, just do your best to keep them open. Good. And take another second deep breath in. You might begin to notice those eyes perhaps starting to blink, perhaps starting to water, perhaps wanting to close, but again, for now, do your best to keep them open. Good. And whenever you're ready, just take that third and final deep breath in. And then as you exhale, just go ahead, close those eyes all the way down completely. That's right. Because what's interesting is that I could tell you just to go ahead and relax your entire body, but that's not necessary. Just begin to notice what's different already now that your eyes are closed. Just begin to become aware of how easy it is to allow yourself relax, to just simply give yourself permission to relax. And all I want you to do is just to begin to focus your attention on your eyelids. They're some of the smallest muscles in your face and the smallest muscles in your body. Just focus your attention on those eyelids and just go ahead and relax those muscles in your eyelids all the way down to a place where it's as if they just won't work. Just like powering off your TV, just like shutting down your laptop, shutting them all the way down to a point where it's as if they just won't work. And only because you've given yourself permission to do something different, because you've given yourself permission to relax into all of your abilities, just give them a test, try and open those things and just let them relax even further down. Good. Almost just like checking a door to make sure it's locked. Just check that you've relaxed them all the way to the point where it's as if they just won't work. And as you've done that for yourself, just send that relaxation that you've created all the way down through your body, just like a nice, comfortable wave of relaxation moving down slowly throughout your body. Good. And as I said before, we don't need to go into a deep state of hypnosis. This is just about simply relaxing and just following a few instructions. Because what's important here is to remember is that whenever I ask you a question and your mind, your body gives you a response, I want you to always go with that first response, even if it doesn't quite make sense somehow. Just allow this process to happen. In a moment, I'm going to ask you some questions and I want you to go with your first impression. And be mindful and be aware that this isn't something that I'm going to ask you to share out loud. So anything that comes up, you don't have to tell me, okay? Excuse me. So as you're now in this peaceful, relaxing state, I want you to let yourself continue to relax as we move through this process. And all I want you to do right now is to begin to think of a feeling that you'd like to have less of. And when you've identified that feeling that you'd like to have less of, I just want you to take one hand and just point to where you can feel it on your body. And notice that there's a color connected to that feeling. Go with first impression, notice that color connected to the feeling. And notice that somewhere around you, somewhere in the space around you is a picture that is connected to that feeling. I want you to reach out with your other hand and point to it. That's right, good. And now I want you to grab it with both hands and trace around the edges so that you know how big that is. Trace around the edges of that picture. And then just imagine that you can put a black frame all around that picture. And then I want you to feel around the edge of that picture and find some dials. Notice that there's some dials, a little bit like those old TVs where it'd have the brightness button that you could turn either side. I want you to imagine that you can grab that brightness button and you can turn it all the way to the left, and the screen of that picture completely whites out. And just notice how that makes you feel as you do that. And then turn that dial all the way to the right so that screen completely blacks out. Notice how that makes you feel, because I want you to decide which one is right for you. So choose a screen, the black one or the white one. And when you've got that, I want you to take the index finger of your dominant hand and I want you to write across that screen everything that that experience had to teach you so that you can keep the lessons and let the rest go. So that index finger becomes the pen, becomes the stylus pen, becomes the Apple pen. I want you to write across the screen everything that that experience had to teach you so that you can keep the lessons and let the rest go. And just let whatever comes up, come up. It doesn't have to make sense. If any emotions come up, just let them. It's all part of the process. And you just keep writing till you've got it all on there. That's right. Good. Excellent, good. Now make sure that you've got it all. And as you've got it all and you've got everything written on that screen, I want you to grab that frame again. And I want you to shrink it down, all the way down to a tiny, tiny cube, like the size of a dice, like the size of a post stamp. And then I want you to imagine and lift it up over your head, floating over your head. And I want you to put it back behind you, behind the horizon, back there. And I want you to nail it back there, glue it back there, staple it back there, whatever way is right for you. Put it back there for all eternity. That's right, good. And when you know that it's back there for all eternity, just try and bring it back and notice what happens instead. Try and bring it back, notice what happens instead. And as you're satisfied with that, just let those eyes open, take a deep breath in and let them close back down as you breathe on out. Good. Because this time, I want you to think of a time when you felt really good, when you felt that resource state that you're after, whether it's that confidence, whether it's that calmness, that thing that you want to have more of, that feeling that you want to increase, intensify, whatever that is for you. And just bring your attention to that. Begin to notice whereabouts that is for you, whereabouts on the body that is for you, and what you label that as. Is it confidence? Is it calmness? Is it composure? Whatever that is for you. As you know, you want to experience that sensation, that feeling is already there within the vocabulary of your mind, of your body. I want you to focus on that feeling. Focus on that feeling with intensity. Allow yourself to adopt the position that you would be in if you had that feeling with you. What would your shoulders be like? What would your head position be like? Where would your chest be? Just allow yourself to adopt that as much as possible and take a hand and point to where you can feel that feeling. Notice there's a color connected to that feeling. First impression, notice that color. And notice now that there's a picture floating around you that represents that feeling. Reach out and grab that picture. Take it with both hands. Lift it up over your head. Expand it out wide. And then just pull it down around you like a nice, warm, cozy blanket. So you're fully immersed in it now. And just really allow that sensation to begin to fill you up. Let it soak up through your entire body, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. Let it process all the way through you till it's impossible to turn off. And notice that process taking place. Notice the changing sensations that are moving through your body. Allow it to be expressed through your face, through your body. Allow it to increase. Allow it to get better. And when you know that you've got it, when you know that it's impossible to turn off, try and turn it off and notice what happens instead. Try and turn it off and notice what happens instead. Good, that's right. And as you're satisfied with that, as you've got that, as you've reconnected with that on a deeper level than even you thought possible was achievable in the last 15 minutes, open your eyes, take a deep breath, come back fully to the space that you're in, ready for the rest of the evening ahead. And welcome back. Okay, give yourselves a little round of applause. Good, well done.